He woke before sunrise, the way he always did, his body trained by years of ranch work and long days under the sun. The ranch was quiet at that hour, the sky only beginning to brighten with a soft gray-blue light. The air smelled of hay, dust, and the cold of the night that had not yet lifted. The rancher, named Luke, stepped out of his cabin and stretched his back, feeling the familiar tightness that came from sleeping on his old cot. He planned to replace it someday, but ranch chores always took priority, and tomorrow always became the next week. Still, he didn't complain. He was used to simple living, but this morning felt different, though he could not explain why until he noticed the faint movement by the far fence line. He squinted, at first thinking it was a stray coyote, or maybe one of his horses standing oddly in the early light. Then, he saw the outline of a person tall, thin, leaning heavily against a fence post. Luke paused, unsure. Strangers out here were rare, and strangers at dawn were almost never good news. He approached slowly, boots crunching softly against the dirt, one hand near the knife he carried at his belt, not to threaten, but to be prepared. Ranch life had taught him caution. As he moved closer, the figure turned their head toward him, and he saw it was a woman. Her long, dark hair was messy and tangled, her clothes torn in places, and her breathing sounded shallow. She looked exhausted, as if every step had been a struggle. "You all right, ma'am?" Luke asked, keeping his voice calm. The woman blinked, her eyes large and sharp despite her weakened state. She looked Apache, and that alone told him this situation might be more complicated than he wished. There had been tensions in the area lately, troubles between settlers and some Apache groups, misunderstandings that grew quickly into fear. The woman swallowed hard before she spoke. "I need a place to rest," she whispered. Her voice was faint, like she had gone days without proper sleep. Luke stepped closer, seeing now the bruises on her arms and the cut on her temple that had dried into a dark line. He wondered who had chased her, what danger she had escaped, and why she had come here of all places. But he also knew she wouldn't last long without help. "You're hurt," he said softly. "Come inside the cabin. You can rest there." She looked at him carefully, trying to decide if he was safe. After a moment, she nodded. Luke moved slowly, showing he meant no harm. She followed him toward the small wooden cabin near the center of the ranch. Every few steps she stumbled, and he steadied her gently by the arm. She didn't pull away. That alone told him she must have been through something terrible. Apache women were usually proud, strong, and cautious around unfamiliar men. For her to accept his help so easily meant she had no strength left to refuse. Inside the cabin, Luke guided her to his bed. It was the only proper bed in the room, wide enough for one person. Made of heavy wood he built himself. She sat down carefully, her breathing uneven. "You can sleep here," he said. She shook her head slowly. "You let me sleep in your bed." Her voice was low, soft, almost trembling. Then she looked at him with surprising boldness, despite her exhaustion. "Rancher, get ready, we're having babies." Luke froze, not sure he had heard correctly. His heart thudded in his chest, partly from shock, partly from confusion. He opened his mouth to speak, then closed it again, trying to understand her meaning. She didn't seem like someone who would joke, especially not in the state she was in. "Ma'am," he said carefully, "I think you're exhausted. You should rest first. We can talk after." But she looked at him with eyes that carried a strange mix of fear, determination, and hope. "I am a fugitive," she said quietly. "My people. I had to leave them. I cannot return. And the men who hunted me, they wanted me for things I did not agree to. I escaped. But now I have no place, no protection, no future, unless someone gives me one." Luke felt a heavy weight in his chest. He could see she wasn't lying. Her trembling hands, the dried blood on her arm, the shadows under her eyes, she had run for her life. He had heard stories about certain groups forcing young Apache women into agreements they could not escape from. Some women fled into the wilderness, hoping to find shelter. Most were never heard from again. She continued speaking, her voice still weak but steady. If you let me stay, if you protect me, then I will stay here as long as you allow. I will work beside you. I will cook. I will help with the animals. I will do anything. And one day, I will give you children. She paused, breathing heavily. I will not be taken again. I choose my place now. Luke sat down slowly on the wooden chair beside the bed. He wasn't sure what to say. He never asked for such a responsibility. He had always lived quietly, tending to his land, avoiding trouble. He never thought anyone, let alone a woman running from danger, would come asking for his protection. He wasn't even sure if he was ready for something like that. He had never considered the idea of a family in any serious way. Life on the ranch kept him too busy to think about it. You should rest, Luke repeated softly, more to give himself time to think than anything else. After you sleep, we'll talk. You've been through too much, Luke repeated. And whole. You should rest. Luke, we'll talk. She nodded once, her body relaxing as she lay down carefully on the bed. Her breathing deepened almost immediately, her exhaustion overwhelming her. He watched as her eyes closed, her face softening a little for the first time. Even with her injuries, there was a quiet strength in her features, a dignity that hadn't been lost despite everything she had survived. Luke stood up, pulled the blanket gently over her, and moved to the cot on the opposite side of the room. He sat down, running a hand over his face. He knew the trouble she brought with her could find its way to his ranch. Fugitive or not, someone might come looking for her. And if they did, he would be dragged into something far bigger than himself. But he also knew the unspoken law of the land. When someone came to you for help, broken, hurt, and desperate, you didn't turn them away. Not if you had a heart. And Luke did. He wasn't sure what the future held. But he felt something shift in him as he watched her sleep peacefully for the first time in who knew how long. He stepped outside to fetch water, wanting to clean her wounds when she woke. The sun had risen now, touching the ranch with warm light. Birds began singing, unaware of the storm that might soon reach this quiet land. Luke looked toward the horizon, wondering who she was running from, and how far behind they might be. But one thing he knew for certain. She had placed her trust in him. And though he didn't fully understand her words about staying, about children, about choosing him, he knew he wouldn't abandon her. Inside the cabin, the Apache woman slept soundly, safe for the first time in days. And outside, the rancher prepared himself for whatever might come next, unaware that this single morning would change both their lives in ways neither of them could imagine. The sun had climbed high by the time the woman finally woke. Luke heard her stir before he saw her move. He was outside, mending a broken fence rail, when the cabin door creaked behind him. He looked over his shoulder and saw her standing there, wrapped in his blanket, her long hair falling loosely around her face. Her eyes looked clearer now, but her body still showed weakness from exhaustion and fear. Luke set down the hammer gently. "You awake?" he said, keeping his voice steady and soft. "How are you feeling?" She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she looked around the ranch slowly, as though trying to understand where she was. The horses grazed near the corral. The chickens clucked around the small yard, and the wind carried the warm smell of hay. It was peaceful, far more peaceful than whatever life she had escaped from. After a few moments, she looked at him again. "I am safe?" she asked quietly. "As long as you're here, yes," Luke said truthfully. She stepped out of the doorway, walking toward him with slow, careful steps. Even though she was still weak, she held herself with a certain dignity, one that told him she was not someone who bowed easily to fear. The blanket moved gently around her, brushing the ground as she walked. He noticed her shivering a little in the morning breeze. "You should stay inside. Rest more," he told her. She shook her head. "I rested. I cannot stay on a bed while you work. That is not my way." Luke didn't argue. He respected her spirit. He handed her a cup of water he had filled earlier. She drank it slowly, savoring each sip like it was the first true water she had tasted in a while. "Can you tell me your name?" he asked gently. For a moment she hesitated, as if unsure if it was safe to share. Then she nodded. "Tala," she said. "My name is Tala." "Tala," Luke repeated. It fit her strong, steady, and gentle all at once. "I'm Luke." She nodded, accepting the exchange quietly. They stood in silence for a few moments. Luke wasn't a man who talked much, and Tala looked like someone who didn't waste words either. Still, there was a natural calm between them, the kind that didn't need to be filled with noise. Finally, Tala looked around again, her eyes moving over every detail of the ranch. "This land, it is peaceful," she said softly. "That's the idea," Luke replied. "A simple life. No trouble." Tala let out a breath that sounded halfway between relief and sadness. "Trouble follows me," she said, "even when I do not want it." Luke knew she was right. She wouldn't have run for no reason. And people who chased someone across miles of land usually weren't the type to give up easily. "You can stay for now," he said, choosing his words carefully. "But we need to understand what you're running from. If someone comes looking for you, I need to be ready." Her eyes lowered for a moment. "I understand," she whispered. Luke motioned for her to sit on a log near the fence. She moved slowly, lowering herself carefully. He sat on another log across from her. The breeze picked up, brushing dust across the yard. After a long pause, Tala finally began to speak. "I lived with my people far to the south," she said. "But not everyone in the tribe was kind. A group of men, dangerous men, decided they wanted control. They tried to make me join them. They said if I agreed, they would spare my family." Her hands trembled slightly. "I refused. My family helped me escape, but they paid a heavy price for it." Luke listened in silence, letting her speak at her own pace. "I ran for days," she continued, "through forests, over mountains. They chased me, always close. I hid during the day and moved at night. I thought I would die many times." She looked directly at him. "When I reached your land, I could not run anymore. I thought, maybe this ranch could be the end of my path." Luke felt something shift in his chest. He had met people from many tribes before, but few spoke with such honesty. Tala's story was heavy, but it explained her fear, her exhaustion, and her desperate request the night before. "You're safe here," Luke said again. "Whoever they are, they won't take you from this ranch." Tala looked at him with something like gratitude, but also with something deeper, a trust she had not given easily. "You let me sleep in your bed," she murmured. "That is something no stranger has ever done for me." Luke shrugged gently. "You needed rest more than I needed a bed. That's all." But Tala shook her head. "No. It is more. When you give someone a place to rest, you give them a chance to live." Luke felt his heartbeat quicken again. He didn't know how to respond to such words. He wasn't used to deep talk, nor anyone looking at him like he was something more than a simple rancher. He cleared his throat and stood up. "You hungry?" he asked. Tala nodded softly. He cooked a simple meal, eggs, beans, and warm bread. After the meal, she attempted to stand and help him clean, but he stopped her gently. "Rest more," he said. "Your body needs time. Rest more." She didn't argue this time. Later in the afternoon, Tala stepped outside again. She watched Luke as he worked feeding the horses, checking water troughs, repairing a loose hinge on the barn door. She observed everything carefully, almost studying the rhythm of ranch life. At one point she walked toward him, her steps steadier now. "I want to help," she said. "You need to heal first," Luke replied. "I can do small things." She insisted. "I do not want to feel useless. Let me work for the food I eat." Her determination made him smile despite himself. "All right," he said. "But only small things." She helped gather eggs from the chicken coop. She washed some vegetables. She folded blankets inside the cabin. The work was light, but it made her feel grounded again. No longer a frightened fugitive running through the night. As the sun lowered behind the hills, the sky turning orange and soft pink, Luke stepped onto the porch and found Tala standing there, watching the horizon. "This place feels like a dream," she whispered. "A place where no one shouts, no one hunts, no one demands something from me." "Everyone deserves peace," Luke said, coming to stand beside her. Tala slowly turned her head toward him. Her eyes held a gentle warmth, mixed with something deeper, something that had begun forming from the moment he rescued her. She took a quiet breath. "I meant what I said last night," she said softly. "I want a future here. With you. If you allow it." Luke felt a rush of confusion and surprise. "Tala, you were scared. Hurt. Maybe you said things because you were tired." But she shook her head firmly. "No. I said it because I made my choice. I cannot return to my people. I cannot live alone in the wild. And I will never join the men who chased me. The only path left is the one I choose, myself." Her voice softened even more. "I choose this ranch. I choose you. 5. I choose this. I choose this. I choose you." Luke didn't know what to say. He felt responsible for her safety, but her words carried a meaning much deeper than safety. He didn't want to make promises he couldn't keep, but he also didn't want to push her away. Because somewhere inside him, something about her honesty, her courage, and her quiet strength had touched him. "When the time is right," Luke said gently, "we'll talk about the future. For now, let's focus on keeping you safe and helping you heal." Tala looked at him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. She accepted his answer, even though her eyes showed that her feelings were already settled. The evening air grew cooler. Luke brought out a lantern and hung it near the porch. Tala stood close, her presence calm, almost comforting. The ranch felt different that night, warmer somehow, less empty. Luke realized that after years of living alone, he didn't mind having someone there. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring. He didn't know if danger would come. But for now, Tala was safe. She was healing, and she was beginning to belong on this quiet stretch of land. And deep inside, a bond had begun between them, quiet, steady, and stronger than either of them had expected. The next morning began quietly, but the peace felt different now. Luke woke before the sun, as he always did, but this time he paused for a moment. He looked toward the bed where Tala slept. She was curled under the blanket, breathing softly. Her face calm in a way he had not seen before. She looked peaceful, no longer running, no longer hiding. He felt a strange warmth in his chest, something like relief, something like responsibility, something he could not name. He stepped outside to start the morning chores. The air was cool, and the sky glowed faintly. Luke moved through the ranch with steady steps, feeding the horses, checking the water barrels, and making sure the animals were safe. His mind, however, kept drifting back to the cabin. He wondered how Tala would be today, stronger, he hoped, and less afraid. When he returned to the cabin, he found her awake and trying to prepare breakfast. She moved slowly, but with purpose. Her hands gentle as she sliced vegetables. She was still wrapped in his blanket, but she stood more confidently than yesterday. "You should sit," Luke said. "You're still recovering." Tala shook her head softly. "I want to help. I slept many hours. My strength is returning." Then she looked at him with a small smile. "Your bed is soft. Softer than any place I have slept in months. We have got arms. Luke felt his ears warm slightly. It is safety, she said simply. Safety is softer than feathers. Her words caught him off guard. He didn't respond, but he didn't need to. She understood. They shared breakfast quietly. The simple meal tasted different, somehow warmer, more complete. Luke wasn't used to eating with someone else. For years, he had eaten alone, working sunrise to sunset with no one to talk to. Now, having Tala across the table made the cabin feel almost like a home. After breakfast, Tala followed him outside. She walked more steadily today, though she still held her side sometimes, where old bruises still ached. "What can I do?" she asked. "You should take it easy," Luke answered. "But if you really want to help, you can brush the horses. They're gentle." She nodded eagerly, and he took her to the corral. The horses sniffed her hands with curiosity. Tala was calm, confident, almost soft with them. She ran her fingers along their manes and brushed their coats with slow, steady movements. Luke watched her from a distance, surprised by how naturally she connected with the animals. "You've done this before," he said. She nodded. "My people raised strong horses. I learned when I was young. The animals understand feelings. When you are afraid, they sense it. When you are calm, they trust you." Luke smiled slightly. "They seem to like you already." Tala continued brushing a chestnut mare. "I want the animals to know I am not danger. I want everything here to know I belong." Luke paused at her words. She had said something similar yesterday, but hearing it again made it more real. She wasn't just passing through. She wanted a place, a future. Around noon, Luke saddled his horse. He needed to ride into town for supplies, flour, tools, and maybe medicine for Tala's wounds. Tala's expression changed slightly when she saw him preparing to leave. "You're going far?" she asked quietly. "Just to the town," he said. She stepped closer, her voice softening. "Will you return?" Luke blinked, surprised she needed to ask. "Of course I'll return." She lowered her eyes. "I have been abandoned before. Many times. People promise to come back, but they don't." Luke felt something twist inside him. He placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Tala, I give you my word. I will be back before sunset." Ting. She looked at him for a long moment, and his steady gaze seemed to calm her. She finally nodded. As Luke rode off, she stood at the fence, watching until he disappeared over the hills. Only then did she return to the cabin. Though her steps were slow, her mind filled with quiet worry. Luke reached the town without trouble. He gathered supplies quickly, but he found himself thinking about Tala more than he expected. He wondered if she was resting. He wondered if she was scared. He wondered why her presence had already changed the quiet rhythm of his life. At the general store, the shopkeeper, an older woman named Martha, raised an eyebrow. "You're buying more than usual, Luke," she said. "Got someone staying with you?" Luke hesitated for a moment. He didn't want to reveal anything that might put Tala in danger. "Just stocking up," he answered. Martha wasn't fully convinced. "Well, you be careful. Heard rumors about trouble not too far from here. Apache groups chasing someone. Sheriff is on edge." Luke's heart tightened. He kept his expression calm. "What kind of trouble?" "No details," Martha said. "Just talk of a woman who escaped something bad. Folks say the men chasing her won't stop until they find her." Luke paid for the supplies and left quickly. As he mounted his horse, the weight of what he had heard settled heavily on his mind. Tala's pursuers weren't just men with anger. They were determined, organized, and still searching. He rode back faster than before. When he arrived at the ranch, Tala was tending the garden near the cabin. When she saw him riding toward her, her shoulders relaxed visibly. Luke dismounted quickly. "You came back," she said softly. I said I would. She smiled, and it was the first full smile he had seen on her face, a gentle, relieved smile that softened everything about her. Inside the cabin, Luke placed the supplies on the table. Tala helped unpack them, her movements careful but eager. When she saw the small medicine pouch he bought, she touched it gently. For me? She asked. Yeah, Luke said. To help your wounds heal faster. She looked at him with eyes filled with gratitude. No one has ever cared for me this way. No one? Luke felt a warmth spread through him, something unfamiliar but pleasant. You're here now. That matters. In the afternoon, the two worked side by side. Luke cut firewood, while Tala sorted vegetables for dinner. She moved with more confidence now, her steps lighter. She hummed a soft tune as she worked, a tune Luke didn't recognize but found calming. As the sun began to lower, Luke noticed Tala watching him often, her eyes following every movement. At one point, she stepped closer. Luke, she said quietly, I must ask something. What is it? If those men come... She paused, swallowing. Will you still protect me? Luke didn't hesitate. Yes, I will. You could be in danger because of me, she said. Your land, your life, everything. I know, he replied simply. She looked at him deeply. Why would you risk this? Luke took a quiet breath. Because you needed help. And because once someone is under my roof, they're not alone. Not anymore. Tala's eyes softened again. She stepped closer, her voice barely above a whisper. I told you. I choose this place. I choose you. And I will stand with you if danger comes. Luke felt her sincerity, strong and warm. He nodded, not trusting himself to speak. The sky darkened, and the first stars appeared. Luke lit a lantern and placed it near the porch. Tala stood beside him, close enough for their arms to almost touch. The night was calm, but he could sense something building between them, trust, connection, something deeper that neither had planned, but both could feel. As they stood together under the quiet sky, Tala finally whispered, Whatever comes next, we face it together. And for the first time in years, Luke didn't feel alone. The next day began with a strange heaviness in the air. The sky was clear, the morning light was bright, and the ranch looked peaceful as usual. But Luke felt something different. It was not fear exactly, but a quiet warning in his chest, like the air before a storm. Tala felt it too. She moved around the cabin calmly, but her eyes were watchful, alert, as though she expected shadows to appear from behind every hill. Luke tried to continue his normal routine. He fed the horses, checked the fences, and carried water from the well. But his mind kept drifting back to Tala. She helped in the garden for a while, picking vegetables slowly, but she kept looking toward the road, the hills, and the tree line. Her instincts were sharper than his, and he trusted them. When Luke returned to the cabin, he saw Tala sitting on the porch, her hands folded in her lap. She looked calm, almost too calm. The kind of calm someone has when preparing for something they cannot avoid. You okay? Luke asked, placing a bucket of water inside the kitchen. She nodded but did not smile. Something feels wrong. Luke sat on the step beside her. Tala didn't answer right away. She closed her eyes, listening to the quiet sounds of the ranch wind in the grass, horses snorting softly, the distant creek, the rustling of leaves. Then she opened her eyes. Yes, she whispered. I don't know how far, but they are not gone. Luke felt a chill move through him despite the warm sunlight. He had hoped they would have more time. Time for Tala to heal. Time to figure out a plan. Time for life to settle into something calm and steady. But trouble had a way of catching up faster than a man could prepare for. We'll handle whatever comes, he said. You're not alone now. Tala's eyes softened at his words, She reached out and lightly touched his arm. It was a small gesture, but it carried deep trust. "I believe that," she said softly. They spent the morning working close to each other. Luke chopped wood near the cabin, while Tala organized supplies inside, moving slowly but determinedly. She tried to carry heavier things once or twice, but Luke gently took them from her hands. She didn't protest. She knew he was trying to protect her. Around midday, Luke saddled his horse to check the far pasture. Tala stayed near the cabin but stepped outside as he prepared to leave. "Will you be long?" she asked quietly. "Just a short ride," Luke said. "I need to check the fence line." She watched him carefully before giving a small nod. "Come back soon. Come back soon." Luke rode out, following the worn path across the grassy hills. The wind was steady, and the earth looked peaceful. But he noticed a few things that didn't feel right. 2 broken branches that looked fresh, a patch of flattened grass near the creek, and faint marks on the dirt that resembled footprints. He crouched near the prints. They were too large to be Tala's and too deep to belong to a child or stray travelers. Whoever had left them was strong and moving with purpose. Luke straightened slowly, scanning the horizon. Nothing moved. No horses, no dust trails, no figures. But something was out there. He rode back faster than usual. When he reached the ranch, Tala was waiting near the barn. She stepped forward quickly as soon as she saw his face. "You found something," she said. "Maybe," Luke answered. "I saw signs. Not close, but close enough." Tala's jaw tightened. "They will come. Sooner than we hoped." Luke led his horse into the barn and loosened the saddle. Tala stood nearby, watching him with steady eyes. "Are you afraid?" he asked gently. "Yes," she admitted. "But I am not running. Not anymore." Luke admired her courage. She had been hunted, chased across miles of wilderness, yet she stood here now, ready to face what was coming. She was stronger than she realized. "You don't have to be brave alone," he said. She looked at him with a quiet warmth. "Because you're here." In the afternoon, they worked together to prepare the ranch. Not for violence, but for safety. Luke made sure the doors were secure. Tala gathered water and food inside the cabin. Luke placed a lantern near the window, ready for night. Tala moved blankets and supplies to a corner where she could hide if needed, though she insisted she would not. "I will not leave you to face danger alone," she said firmly. Luke didn't argue, but he hoped she wouldn't have to face anything at all. As the sun lowered toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the ranch, Luke felt the air tighten again. It was too quiet now. No birds singing, no rustling of animals. The world seemed to be watching, waiting. Tala came to stand beside him on the porch. Her hands were clasped together nervously, but her eyes were steady. "If they come," she whispered, "they will demand I return. They will say they have a right to take me." "They don't," Luke said. "You choose where you belong." Tala took a slow breath. "I choose here. I choose you. I will say that again if they try to take me." Luke felt something warm spread through him at her words. He didn't know how everything would turn out, but he knew he would stand with her. The sky darkened to deep blue, and stars began to appear. Luke lit a lantern and hung it by the door. The gentle glow cast soft light on the porch, on Tala's face, on the quiet ranch. Inside the cabin, they ate a simple meal. Tala tried to eat, but her worry made it difficult. Luke tried to keep the conversation calm, but both of them kept glancing toward the windows, listening for footsteps or voices. After dinner, Tala cleaned the dishes slowly, her hands trembling slightly. Luke stood nearby, wanting to say something that would lift her fear, but unsure what words would help. Finally, she spoke first. "Luke, if something happens to me, promise you won't blame yourself." Luke turned sharply toward her. "I want your promise," she said softly. I don't want you to carry guilt for things you cannot control. Luke stepped closer. Nothing is going to happen to you. Not while you're here. But, no, he said firmly. I gave you my word. You're safe with me. Tala looked at him for a long moment. Her eyes filled with deep emotion. Not fear, not despair, but trust. She nodded slowly. I believe you. The wind outside picked up, brushing against the cabin walls. The night grew colder. Luke checked the doors again, then sat near the fireplace, watching the flames flicker. Tala sat across from him, pulling the blanket around her shoulders. Minutes passed in silence, broken only by the crackling of the fire. Then, suddenly, a faint sound reached them. A distant horse. Then another. Slow, deliberate hoofbeats. Tala froze. Luke stood up slowly, moving toward the window. He didn't step close, he only listened. The hoofbeats grew clearer, moving steadily toward the ranch from the direction of the hills. Tala's voice trembled. They found us. Luke's heart pounded, but his voice remained steady. Stay behind me. No matter what happens. Tala stood, her legs shaking slightly but her spirit unbroken. She walked to Luke's side. I'm not hiding, she whispered. I will face them with you. Outside, the riders approached the front of the ranch, their silhouettes dark and heavy under the moonlight. The moment they had feared had finally arrived. The quiet ranch, once peaceful and calm, now stood at the edge of danger. And Luke knew one thing with complete certainty. He would not let them take Tala, not tonight. Not ever. The night felt colder as the riders approached, their shadows long and dark in the moonlight. Luke stood on the porch, his body steady, even though his heart beat hard inside his chest. Tala stayed close behind him, her breath shallow but determined. She wasn't running this time. She wasn't hiding. She was choosing to stand her ground. The hoofbeats slowed as 3 riders came into full view. Their horses were strong, lean, and clearly used to traveling long distances. The men on them wore stern expressions, their faces roughened by wind and sun. They looked tired, but not tired enough to give up their purpose. The tallest of them stepped forward, stopping a few feet from the porch. He stared at Tala first, then at Luke. You have something that belongs to us, he said in a low, heavy voice. Luke didn't move. I have a guest under my roof, he replied calmly. No one here belongs to anyone. The man's jaw tightened. The woman is from our tribe. She must come with us. Tala stepped forward, though Luke tried gently to stop her. She shook her head and spoke clearly. I do not belong to you, she said. I left by my own choice. I will not return. One of the men on horseback shifted angrily. You broke your agreement, Tala. You escaped your duty. My duty is to my own soul, Tala said, not to your demands. The tall man narrowed his eyes. We are not here to argue. We are here to take you back. Luke stepped fully in front of her now, his voice firm. She stays. The men stared at him with a mixture of irritation and disbelief. They hadn't expected a rancher, quiet, simple, living alone to stand up to 3 hardened riders. But Luke didn't waver. This is between us and her, one rider said. Stay out of it, rancher. You don't want trouble. Luke shook his head. You rode onto my land. You threatened someone under my protection. That makes it my business. Tala touched Luke's arm softly, silently asking him not to risk himself. But Luke didn't step back. His feet were planted firmly on the old wooden boards. The tall rider sighed, looking tired rather than angry. Rancher, you don't understand her importance. She was chosen for something. She has responsibilities among our people. No, Tala said quietly but firmly. You chose me for things I never wanted. You gave me no voice, no path of my own. I am not returning. The man looked at her with frustration. If you stay here, you turn your back on your tribe forever. So be it, Tala said without hesitation. A long silence filled the night. The horses pawed the ground, restless. The wind carried the smell of dust and distant pine. Luke stood like a solid wall in front of Tala, ready for whatever might happen. The tall man finally leaned forward slightly in his saddle. This rancher does not understand what he is protecting. She brings danger, conflict, and she promises him a future she cannot fulfill. Tala stepped up beside Luke now, standing shoulder to shoulder with him. "I fulfill what I choose," she said. "I choose this land. I choose this life. And I choose him." Luke felt her words settle deep inside him. It was not the dramatic declaration the riders wanted. It was quiet, honest, and strong. Something only real truth could carry. The three men exchanged glances. They had expected a terrified woman begging to be left alone. They had expected a rancher easily scared. They had expected a quick capture. They got none of that. Finally, the tall rider spoke again. "If you stay with him, your bond with us ends. We will not search for you again. You will not be welcome back. You will not be protected by our laws." Tala lifted her chin, then let it end. The man stared at her for several seconds. Then he exhaled slowly and signaled to the other two riders. They turned their horses around. The tall man paused one last time, looking at Luke. "You protect her now. That is your burden." Luke nodded once. "It's not a burden." The rider gave a long, unreadable look, then finally turned away. The three horses moved off into the night, their hoofbeats fading slowly into the distance until the only sound left was the wind again. Tala stood frozen for a moment, as if unsure whether it was real. Luke waited beside her, not touching her yet, giving her space to breathe. When she finally exhaled, it sounded like she was releasing months of fear from her chest. "They're gone," she whispered. "Yeah," Luke said softly. Tala's shoulders trembled, not with fear this time, but with relief. She turned toward Luke, her eyes shining with quiet emotion. "You said you would protect me, and you did." Luke looked at her gently. "You don't owe me anything." Her voice softened even more. "I owe you everything." He shook his head. "You owe yourself the chance to live free. That's all." Tala stepped a little closer. "I have freedom now. Because of you. Because you gave me a place to rest. A place to heal. A place to choose my future." Luke swallowed, feeling his heart grow warm at her words. "You can stay as long as you want." Tala reached for his hands. Her touch was warm, steady, filled with trust. "I want to stay forever. Not because I must. Because I choose it." Luke held her hands gently. Her words settled deep, deeper than anything he'd expected. When she first appeared by his fence, days ago, the danger was gone now. The riders had left, and they would not return. Tala was free, truly free, for the first time in her life. And she had chosen this quiet ranch, this simple life, this man. Together, they walked into the cabin. The fire still burned softly inside. The air felt warm and calm again. Tala folded the blanket and placed it on the bed. Luke sat beside her, still processing the night's events. After a moment of silence, Tala spoke again, her voice low and filled with deep meaning. "When I came to your land, I had nothing. No safety. No home. No future. You changed that. You deserved safety," Luke said. "I only gave you what anyone should have. But you did it when no one else would," she replied. "You risked your peace for me. You risked your life." Luke didn't know how to answer. He wasn't a man of many words. Instead, he simply said the truth. "I didn't want to lose you. Access. I didn't want to lose you." Tala's eyes softened even more. She touched his cheek gently, her hand warm and full of gratitude. "You won't." They sat together quietly, the firelight flickering on the walls, filling the cabin with a gentle glow. Outside, the night was calm again, like the storm had passed and left nothing but stillness behind. A new life waited for both of them, not a life of running, not a life of fear, but a simple, peaceful life, built slowly, honestly, and with choice. Tala leaned her head softly on Luke's shoulder. He wrapped an arm around her, holding her with the same steady strength he had shown from the beginning. The ranch was no longer just a place of work. It was their home now, their future, their shared peace. And in that quiet cabin, under the soft firelight, Tala whispered words that would shape the rest of their lives. Our story begins now.